You are live!
Yay!
Yay! And here we are in New York, where we clap at 7 o'clock for all of our healthcare workers and doctors and nurses and delivery people and postal workers and anybody you want to clap for. That's what we do here. It's tough out there right now, and we're learning how to deal with it wherever we live. So we have Greg here, we have Alison, we have Abby and Kate. We're from pretty much the Northeast, and Greg's from New Orleans. So I got wait a second, I forgot my cowbell. That's what I do every night.
More cowbell.
And the funniest thing is we have a convent across the street from us. And then the nuns are out there banging on pots every night. So it's a lot of fun to talk to them across the street. So we're going to be talking about presidents and our own careers and our stories in the book, Taking of the President, here pretty soon. Listen to that out there. It's crazy. And we're also coming from Woodstock tonight, virtual Woodstock. Alison Gaylin. We are co-sponsored with the Three Rooms Press is co-sponsored with the Golden Notebook, and the greatest store, and we are selling the books through them. So there's your little link at the bottom. So order the Faking of the President here or there. So, all right.
Oh.
So we will. That's it. There's 2 minutes. So we'll close the window. I mean, I could leave everybody off, and we could, and I could carry through that. But I think it's kind of fun, huh?
Oh yeah.
Fun out there, everybody. I've got 3 comments. That's not too many. Get on with this. Get quit the clapping. Anyhow, there goes Kat. So that means we're going to be manning the computers for any comments. Please say hello, and we're going to go forward here with The Faking of the President. That's our book, 19 Stories of White House Noir, which I edited. And we also have stories from Alison Gaylin. And we have story from Abby L. Vandiver and Greg Herren and Kate Flora. That's how they appear in the book. And that's how we will go in order tonight. But first we're going to, somebody talking. I hear some voice. Somebody's got something going on. Anyhow, let's talk. Let's meet everybody here. There's Greg, there's Alison, Abby, and Kate. Thank you so much for coming. Greg, you're coming from?
New Orleans, Louisiana.
That's right. He's down in NOLA there. If you look in the back, he's probably got a roof going on the stove there. Ready to throw in the crawfish. It's crawfish time, isn't it?
It is. It's also strawberry season.
Ooh, boy.
And Creole tomatoes.
Oh, tomatoes. That's
something to clap about.
And Alison, you're up in Woodstock above me here, next to the Golden Notebook. And
don't throw away from the Golden Notebook, which is a great bookstore who they do deliveries to your house, so they can deliver this fabulous book right to your doorstep if you're in the Woodstock area. Probably not to New Orleans, although I'm sure.
Order your book from them. They can send it to you anywhere in the country. So
yes, they can send
sponsoring it tonight. And also, if it were 51 years ago, we could be going to Yasgur's farm. How far away from Yasgur's farm are you?
2 hours actually.
Wow. That's big of a town.
The Woodstock was not in Woodstock, but
that's a day trip.
Yeah,
a long time, man.
It was originally supposed to be in Woodstock, but then the town board nixed it at the last minute, and they had all the tickets printed up that said Woodstock, and then apparently Max Yasgur donated his farm, which is out in way in the Catskills, past like Liberty, but now that farm is the site of the Woodstock Museum, which is pretty cool, and they have concerts there when people aren't in quarantine and they actually go to concerts. They have them there. So So.
Great. So Woodstock wasn't in Woodstock. Now we're looking. We're already learning.
No.
We're already learning here. That's great. So you and Abby, you're in Ohio. Is that true? Where are you?
Sunny Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland. Okay. So
Yep.
if you had your own Woodstock act, you would have to be CSNY, right? For Ohio, you know, you would be Tin Soldiers and Nixon coming. Anyhow, so how's Cleveland?
Cleveland is sunny. We had snow last week in May, not just one day, a couple days, but it's trying to get a little sun outside, you know, so that's nice. And one day we'll be able to get back outside. It's too bad our book had to come out into the world when we couldn't come out into the world.
I know. We had everything going for us. I timed it to come out during the primaries so that we had built in every other day there was a primary to say, hey, the faking of the president. Look at this guy. Let's get rid of him. And, I don't know that the guy didn't cause this pandemic just to keep our book down. You know what I mean?
Well, just like our president, you never know what might happen. So,
yes, there you go. There you go. But and we're pushing the book. We're having a lot of fun with it. We've done a lot of shows. We've got one more on Tuesday. But it's so nice of you to join us. And
good to be here.
I love your story too. We'll be talking about it in a little while, and talking to you for a second here in a second. All right. And then Kate, hello. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Peter.
Wonderful. And you are in near Boston, right?
Right, outside Boston.
Okay. So you had a lot of germ central too up there, right?
Oh yeah, I mean the mask fight thing is constant. You know, the people.
That's too bad. It's amazing that people all wouldn't just wear masks, period. You know, why would you even think there's another way? But we're in this divide right now.
Right.
This divide is that deep, and it's just insane. What can you do? What we can do is push our book and talk about, what's wrong and how to make it right, and what's right also. There's a couple of things that are, right, and that includes using your imagination to create exposure of what's wrong, and that's what we've done here with the book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Alison for a minute and talk to her, and put the other three off for a second, and we'll talk to Alison about her career, and we'll get to each one of you. Okay. So hold on a second. You guys will be in the green room, okay?
Okay.
Enjoy the green room, and here's Alison Gaylin. It's so wonderful to see you.
See you, Peter.
What about a week and a half ago, right? It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. I had a great time then. So
we're in Powerhouse Books in Brooklyn. We're working with this, but it was a lot of fun, and of course we had a little delve into Elvis and Nixon, your story. But first, let's talk about you, Edgar Winter, for If I Die Tonight, and then you also had Never Look Back, and you have a new book coming out, or?
I have another book coming out in 2021 that I'm
2021. It's coming out.
That I'm still working on right now, finishing it up. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So we met during Crime Plus Music. It was another anthology that was edited by Jim Fusilli, and he brought you in to do a story, and you wrote a story about the band X, whom you used to dress up like Exene, right, when you were young, and you kind of
daydreamed about being as cool as Exene.
Yeah. So you created a fictional character that went out into the world and did that, and it was incredible. But we got to go and meet Exene since we're kind of tight with them, and that was just so much fun. I've never. You looked about 10 years old. You were just so happy. And
it was an absolute thrill for their. It was a reunion concert, and it was probably one of the best concerts I've ever been to. And it was just amazing to me. Like, I knew every single song. And
you did. You couldn't be. Every time your smile got bigger, and it looked great. Now you're smiling. I wish everyone could have seen it at the end of that night.
Yeah, I was a little sweatier.
So what we'll do is we'll all get together here in a minute. I'm going to bring up Abby for a second, and talk to her and just get everybody familiar with her. And at the end of the run here, we'll all get together again and discuss our direction with the presidents, and then we'll come back and see you and talk about Nixon and Elvis and have you read from your story. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. All right. I'll see you in a second. Abby, how are you? Abigail Vandiver. Here she is.
Hi there. How are you, Peter?
Pretty good. Pretty good. In New York
Good.
City, Germ Central. I've been indoors. I mean, I've been out maybe 10 hours tops in 65 days.
Yeah.
So I just don't go out.
Right.
You know? It's
No,
like
I stuck myself inside before. Ohio was one of the first states to do the shelter in place, but before they even said anything, I put myself at home. I'm older, high risk, so wasn't worth it. And I thought I was going to be able to write, but someone told me it's like a grieving process because I have not been able to write or read that much, so hasn't been a productive quarantine. I'm not like Shakespeare writing plays or Newton coming up with when he was in quarantine, he came up with calculus. So haven't been that ingenious.
give yourself some time.
Yeah.
I can see calculus, a new calculus coming from Abby. I'm telling you, don't sell yourself short. It can just come flowing out of you, just like your other books. You got didn't you have a new book just come out too?
Yeah, a new book just came out Tuesday, the 12th. It's a cozy mystery. I usually write cozy mysteries, so this noir faking of the president was new for me, but I got a deal with Penguin, and that was the first book that came out. It's called A Deadly Inside Scoop, so I'm real happy with that. And I set it in a real place in Ohio, Chagrin Falls. People come every year from all over to see the falls, and they have a balloon glow where they have balloons, hot air balloons take off and have light shows with the balloons. So it's a fun place, and I set my story there. So,
all right. So, and also,
of course, there's murder. I write about murder. So
good. And you also, we talked on the phone. I was down in DC. We were doing something down there, and we spoke about this LBJ and what how you were inspired to tackle that. You did a fine job. And we're going to talk about that in a little while. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I'm going to bring up Greg now. And we're going to just get acquainted with Greg for a second. Okay. And we'll bring everybody back up as soon as we're done with talking with Kate. Okay.
All right. See you in a bit.
All right. Greg in New Orleans. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hiding the dishes.
Hiding the dishes and the dirty counters.
All right. I'm sure they're just fine. I don't believe you. So, Greg, we met for Florida Happens, right? Well, we met before then down at the BoucherCon, I think, in New Orleans a couple of years ago. Remember we met in the hotel? or we met the first year there for that was it. We met in June for the ALA. We were there and came and the Marriott and sat with us because we were going to do the Florida Happens, the BoucherCon anthology. So that's where we met. You had a story in that called Cold Beer, No Flies, plus you were the editor. And we wanted very much to get a two-peat after the Obama and Herren win in 2018. So, but they didn't give us an anthology award that next year in Dallas. So I tried really hard. So we're going to be pushing for next year in New Orleans for them to have the anthology award. So have the faking of the president up for an award, and including your story. You wrote about James Buchanan. And I love your story. So how are things going down there? You're all right? Are you working on a new book right now, or you're always working on a book, right?
Yeah, I'm always working on something. I'm putting together a proposal right now that I've been asked to do for a potential new series, and should have had that done quite some time ago, but just now getting to finish it. And I've been writing a lot of short stories lately, and I have a couple of novel manuscripts that I need to go over one more time. Need one more pass through, but I don't know. I'm always seems like I'm in the middle of a million different things at the same time.
That's just who you are. That's how I know you, and I know that everybody knows you that way. And hopefully, a few more people interested in reading know you now through our live stream here. So,
Hopefully.
yeah, they will. They do. And so what we'll do is we'll bring up Kate now and talk with her for a couple of seconds, and we'll bring everybody back up and get the presidential thing going. We'll talk about our current situation and get ready to delve into each story. So I'll see you in a couple. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And here comes Kate Flora from you're near Boston. What's the town?
Concord.
Concord, right? That's where the
yeah. It's not a bad town to be a writer in. Let's put
Concord,
it that way.
yes. At least can remain patriotic there, no matter what, right?
And we were on the right side of the revolution that time.
Yeah. We were on the right side, exactly, or the left side, should we say? So, how have you been doing? Have you been productive during our lockdown?
I think we're all suffering from the, I don't know what it is, corona insanity, corona listlessness, whatever it is. I thought this would be the perfect time to write 1,000 things because after all, what else do you do? I'm like, I don't know, 60,000 words into a book. I have absolutely no idea what the book's about. And it's been an interesting adventure. I do have a new book out on the 20th.
Okay.
Which is, for me, a huge departure from dark, gritty police procedurals, which is a romantic suspense.
Ooh. Yeah. What's the name of that?
Wedding Bell Ruse.
Wedding Bell Ruse instead of blues, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
You like those puns like me. I know.
Actually, do you know how I got the title? This is
no.
I couldn't find a title that I liked. I couldn't find a title that the publisher liked. So I went to Facebook and I said to them, give me lists. And everybody made suggestions and the editor picked one. So it's not my, but it works fine.
I don't know. Was that mine? I forget. I know I put one up there.
I'll have to go back and look and see who the winner was, Peter.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, how's Ken doing? Good?
He's doing well. He's probably responsible for the story that I wrote since he's writing about, the law in the 1930s. So
is he really?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I actually borrowed a book from him to read about Huey Long after reading All the King's Men.
Sure. Yeah, we'll be talking about Huey Long and FDR here pretty soon with you. But we're going to bring everybody else up now. And let's talk about our current situation. We'll talk about the book for a second. And we'll talk about our current situation. And who's left? There's Abby. Okay, great. We're in a little different order, but we do have the faking of the president, 19 stories of White House noir. And if you want to know what White House noir is, please stay tuned to our broadcast, because you will find out all 5 of us will be reading from our respective White House noir stories. So. And the book is available at the Golden Notebook below. Please go to the link. You can order the book right now. I think it's $16, which means if you take your stimulus check, I think you can buy 75 copies, right? So, is that correct, or am I losing it? Is it 75 copies? So buy 75 copies from the Golden Notebook with your stimulus check and send them to the White House. Send them right to the White House, all of them, and say, whatever you want, write him a little note in here, and we'll all be proud of you. So, Kate, Greg, Abby, Allison, here we are stuck in not only in our homes, unable to go out, but it's like I'm in the Trump deranged syndrome. They've talked about this. I mean, I've had enough. Every day, every second is like, one more, feather pulling out of my wings, something. And so, what do you think? How are we going to get out of this eventually?
Elect a new president.
Yeah, well, we do have November coming, and that is, You know, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see them try anything and everything to postpone the election, cancel the election, come up with some war with China, anything that they could do. They're capable of anything. And here we are stuck in you know, we're lovely writers and we're not stuck anywhere because we have our imaginations, but we're not in the French Revolution running out there storming the Bastille, which might be the next move.
I'm up for it.
Good. And so we're all voting blue. I know that, and we don't want to see Trump another day. And I don't want to hear his name again. But so let's tackle everybody. Let's go to each person and talk about their story and how they came about, and let's discuss a little bit about each president that you've picked. And then afterwards, we'll all discuss, maybe spread that knowledge around about that particular president and kind of have a little discussion after the wonderful contributor reads part of their story. So I'm going to bring up Alison now, and you guys are going back to the green room. Don't feel bad. And she's gonna. We'll talk for a minute. We'll read, and then we'll all get back together and let's talk about our dear friend Tricky Dick. All right. Alison, you're staying on.
Yep.
So you got Nixon Elvis, which we have talked about. One thing we missed is that I don't think that we discussed it, but he brought him a gun to the White House, right? He brought I mean, I wish I could walk into there, you know. But
he was going to be a marshal, so you know, marshals have to carry guns, right?
So he gave him like one of these commemorative 45s in a case. You know, he gave that to Richard Nixon, which is completely insane. I mean, it's insane. It's more insane than even today. You couldn't make this up.
Yeah, the whole meeting was it's just amazing. It's so inspiring for any type of a noir story. Just these two outsized personalities meeting in the White House, and you know that don't go together, but somehow do go together in a way, and you know.
Well, they do. They were, you know, Nixon may have been on the tail end of the top of his game, and certainly Elvis, you know, wasn't at the top of his game, but he was still a well-respected entertainer to that silent majority. But he blamed the Beatles for everything, right? He said the Beatles, the British invasion.
Loved him, and they were very hurt by the fact that he wrote Nixon a letter saying that the Beatles were, you know, foreigners infiltrating youth and convincing them to do drugs and things like that. And the Beatles were like, well, we were Elvis fans. Like, what?
Yeah. He wanted to get to see Nixon, and he utilized anything he could. So I think he ran. You know, he said, "Well, I'm an American, and we want to bring the Americans back to the top." So let me read.
Marshal title for sure. So I'm
going to let you read from your story, and then when you're done, we'll all come back. Maybe I'll take a second with you and catch your breath, and then we'll all come back and discuss Tricky Dick, as I said. So I'll see you in a few.
Okay.
Take it away, Alison Gaylin. Burning Love.
Yes. Okay, so this story is called Burning Love, and I'm just going to sort of take it away from the beginning. Good morning, Mr. President. Elvis says it as soon as Dick picks up the phone, before he's even able to choke down the last spoonful of cottage cheese and ketchup and get a goddamn hello out of his mouth. He's like that, Elvis. Quick on the draw, impatient with the formalities. Dick only met him once before, and he hardly ever thinks of that time. But he had noticed it then, too, the way he grabbed his hand and shook it so fast the Secret Service guys were reaching for their guns. Dick remembers feeling sorry for that entourage of his because it had to be hard keeping up with a whirlwind like the king. More than once, Dick had seen those poor Memphis Mafia bastards get their asses handed to them for being too slow in fulfilling his requests. Where's my Fresca, Sonny? Didn't I ask for a Fresca 15 seconds ago? I bet the president would like a can too. I shouldn't have to tell you that, Charlie. What the fuck is wrong with you, man? Am I the only one who thinks around here? Elvis had impressed Dick as the man who knew what he wanted and wanted it yesterday. A good quality for a leader, and one that had reminded him of himself. though Dick would sooner rather be tarred and feathered than wear a dress shirt unbuttoned that far down the belly. Mr. President, Dick thinks. What a damn kind thing to call him. It's August 6, 1977, 3 years to the day after the commies and Jews forced him out of office. Outside of David Frost, and Dick is pretty sure that limey motherfucker was being sarcastic, nobody calls him Mr. President anymore, and that includes Pat, no matter how much he begs her to. Hi, Elvis. Mr. President, I'd appreciate it if you called me Federal Agent Presley. Christ on a crutch, forgot all about that. Federal Agent Presley, of course. Thank you for your service. It's a lifetime appointment, right? Yes, sirree, lifetime. Longer even, if you want it to be. Dick can feel the sweat beating up on his forehead, his pulse starting to race. It's not just the king. All celebrities make him nervous, especially the rock and rollers, the hep cats. A few seconds with one of those guys, and it's the Kennedy debacle all over again. He still turns red thinking about that time he got mauled by Sammy Davis Jr. Elvis is saying something about the peanut farmer honoring his federal field marshal title, but Dick's having trouble focusing. All he can think is, why is he calling me? Dick hasn't talked to the king in 7 years. He barely remembers most of what was said during that meeting, but as he recalls, they had said goodbye on a cordial note. No unpaid debts, right? Right? Elvis had contacted him in the first place because he wanted to be a federal drug enforcement marshal and special agent first class. And even though Dick had no idea what any of that meant, he'd gotten Rosemary to make up a certificate. She special ordered a shiny badge, too, sort of like those plastic wings the commercial airline pilots used to give Trisha and Julie when they were little. Nice souvenirs. Of course, the girls never called those pilots out of the blue while they were eating their breakfast, demanding to be called captain. Presley's talking about Las Vegas now, how it's the only place he truly feels at home anymore. I know I'm a Southern boy at heart, Mr. President, but Vegas, I gotta get back there. Something else. It's special. But I don't need to tell you that, do I? Dick says, Pat and I saw Wayne Newton play there once. Great little town. For several seconds, Presley goes quiet. If Dick didn't hear him breathing into the phone, he'd have thought the call had disconnected. You don't remember? Huh? Vegas, Mr. President. He says it again, very softly. Vegas. Dick clears his throat. His cheeks feel hot. Twin beads of sweat trickle down his ribcage, and he tries telling himself it's the celebrity thing again, how famous people are semi-delusional because they live in their own world, everybody treating them like royalty and telling them they're right all the time, and that's why they make him so nervous. He's a man of logic, after all, a meat and potatoes guy, when people like Elvis, the hep cats, they're all granola and moonbeams and utter nonsense. But there's more to it than that. Vegas. The tone in Elvis's voice, it stirs something in him, the faintest hint of an emotion he can barely remember experiencing, of tiny bright dots and a warmth welling in his chest, a sea of lights and a landscape of hope. Mr. President, I need to talk to you. Dick shakes the image from his brain. Go ahead, he says. No, I mean in person. Federal Agent Presley, my plate's kind of full right now. I've got to go over the proofs for my memoir, and Pat's cousin is visiting, and I don't think I can get out to Memphis, Mr. President. I'm awfully sorry, but brother. Yes, Dick says. He can barely speak. I'm here in San Clemente. He grips the receiver, his hand starting to shake. He feels as though he might cry because he remembers now. The twinkling lights, the racing of his heart, all of it, every mind-blowing second. Brother, you're here? Staying at the Seahorse. Just about 5 minutes from your pad if I tell the limo driver to gun it. 1,000 questions roam through Dick's mind, and he stares at the receiver as though he expects it to answer all of them. Okay, he says. I guess I'll see you in a few. That's it.
Alison Gaylin, wonderful, Burning Love. Elvis goes to the Oval Office and sits with Dick Nixon, and there is much more that goes on there in The Faking of the President. Order your book at the link below. And I used to do an Elvis. I did him later, if you don't mind, if I do him again.
Yes, do it. It's got to be better than mine.
I said, shake, burger, and fries. It was when he was had put on a lot of weight. So, you know.
It's not bad.
All right, so let's bring everybody up and let's talk about Nixon and his effect on where we are today. Here comes Greg and Kate and Abby. I mean, Nixon has a lot to do with where we are today, I think. What do you think, Abby?
Well, it just goes to show, in my story, you'll see history repeats itself. You know, you give someone a little power. I think it was Eddie Murphy that said, you give a man a rope and you want to be a cowboy, you know, you pass out a little power and they just want to do everything. So, you know, it's a mindset. And that's the way Nixon was. That's the way this president is. You know, they took that power to heart and bad things happen because of it, to them as well as to, you know, the citizens of the United States.
Especially to us. Yeah, we're the ones that pay the brunt.
We're paying more this time than we did with what Nixon did, I think.
Sure. Well, Nixon also was really, especially there at the beginning of his campaign in '68, coming off LBJ saying, I'm not running. As soon as that happened, Nixon got in there and turned off the Hanoi peace talks. You know, the Vietnam peace talks, which I'm sure another 15 to 20,000 people lost their lives, if not more. Probably 30, probably half the amount that were lost in Vietnam were because he wanted to win the election. So I don't know. You know, we've got a lot more deaths now, but there are more people in the world. It might equal out what Nixon did there. That little
relative, yeah, might be relative.
We're going to talk more about LBJ and Nixon. He's in your story as well. Yep. So, what do you think about Nixon deep down, Alison?
Well, I just think he's a fascinating character, and because this is a noir anthology, I kind of think he's the most noir. Probably the most noir president we've had. He has the paranoia. He's got the criminal connections. He's extremely intelligent, unlike possibly the current occupant of the Oval Office. And he got wrapped up in something that like in a classic noir that sort of took him over and took over his personality and ruined a lot of lives in the process. So I find him really pretty fascinating to write about, and I love anything with a showbiz connection, and his meeting with Elvis I thought was irresistible to write about. So I decided, hey, if nobody's doing Nixon and Elvis, that's what I want to do.
Well, you did it. It's a wonderful story, and it's the leadoff story in the book, Faking of the President. I'm getting good at this. I pick it up in the wrong hand and be over here, but now I'm getting the hang of this. But he was so paranoid at that time. He won 49 states, yet he still had to, they sick Arthur Bremer on George Wallace. They closed down the airport on Muskie. They Chappaquiddick. There's so many things. He had to ruin everybody around him because nobody was going to do to him what Kennedy did in 1960. I mean, this is the guy that carried around. He's almost as psychotic as this guy now. Maybe even more so at that time. It was the vice president for 8 years.
Like in my story, B.B. Rebozo makes an appearance, and just every sort of name that you drop, whether it's B.B. Rebozo or Sammy Davis Jr. when you're talking about Nixon, is just so interesting and rich and coming up just. He just
great for us writers, but as we said, Abby, not so great for the American people. Greg, what do you think? How did you deal with those days?
The Nixon years?
Yeah.
Greg was only 2 years old when.
No. I was in junior high school. I was in junior high school. Nixon bears so much responsibility for where we are now that a lot of people don't even connect the dots. Even with Nixon, you only go back to Watergate in '68. He was associated with McCarthy in the '50s in the House.
Absolutely, yes.
He destroyed Helen Gahagan Douglas's career. He was always that way. He was always this monster and this power hungry, anything for power type person. And even the Republican Party comeback after Watergate in 1980 was all shaped by what happened to Nixon. The communists got Nixon. The communists got Nixon.
Yeah, and we're dealing with that now. Yeah.
And the media, the liberal bias media, it's all connected together, and this is the pinnacle of it. I hope. I certainly hope.
You're right. You're right.
Let's hope that it's not going to get it's going to get better from here on out. But it's really astonishing to see how I've been reading a lot about the 50s and the 40s lately, and I've been reading, hence my James Buchanan story, since 2016. I've been reading about mediocre presidents. And it's really fascinating to see how after the Nazis, after the war was over, then the communists became the big enemy. And that was anybody who was against conservatism was a commie.
Yep.
Then when the wall came down and all of that ended, then it became the Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
The Muslims and the brown people. It's always been the black people. sorry, Abby. But
it's true.
They need a major outside enemy, and then you have your internal enemy, and that fear is what wins them elections.
Yeah, that was a strong run for them because we'll talk more about it with LBJ. Kate, what do you think, Nixon at that time and that winning 49 states? I mean, at that time, and then turning around and what had happened, the media taking control, and that's a problem now too.
I think we were so shocked by what Nixon did, and it's nothing compared to what we're seeing now. And we've got 6 months to go, which means
the hours are who knows. Yeah,
the next 6 months could be truly make Nixon look like Saint Nixon, right? Saint Dick.
Well, I can never go that far, but you may be right. It's like only killing 30,000 instead of 150. Yes, he's a saint. Thank you, Dick, for only killing 30,000.
Right.
It's really amazing how every Republican president makes the previous one look better.
You've got a point. You've got a point there. Yeah. And I don't know if George Bush Sr. counts in that one. He was the same. He didn't make Reagan look any better. So. It
was really just a continuation, really.
It was. All right. Well, why don't we get to talk with Abby here about LBJ and where she goes with her story. And we'll put you all in the green room and come back and let's talk a little about what she has to say and those LBJ years and him taking over for Kennedy. That's a very sad time for our country and has a lot to do with where we're at with the rednecks, the conservatives now. So let's bring up Abby. You're going to stay on, and I'm going to take off Alison, Kate. We'll see you in a little bit, and Greg. And Abby, we have LBJ, reckless disregard. That's your story. Mm-hmm. And I was so glad we were able to talk on the phone about it. He was a real politician. But the funniest thing I saw, not funny, but he ran in like 1938 for Senate, I think, or a senator in Texas. And his problem was he didn't have a military, he was just in the reserve, right? and
Right.
he ran out there and joined, so became a lieutenant in the reserve, and from that's why, because he wanted to win the election. They said, go out and get some military cred, and you'll win the election here in Texas, boy. So and that's what he did.
And you don't need to do that anymore. Those things don't seem to matter anymore. Whether you go out and fight for your country and you're patriotic, it doesn't seem to matter anymore.
Well, he didn't want to. See, the thing about him is he was like more of the guys today. He didn't want to get involved in that, but that's why he joined the reserve. And then he talked somebody into letting him go over to the South Pacific. Douglas MacArthur knew who he was, and Douglas MacArthur thought Roosevelt sent him over to tell him what to do, and when he found that he didn't, he kind of took a shine to LBJ, and LBJ was going to get on a plane. He was going off for a mission, and he had to go to the bathroom. And when he came back, another guy had his seat and said, "Take the next plane," and that plane was shot down.
Wow. And I didn't know that story.
He would have been dead had he not had to pee. This is like the folklore of LBJ. And he got on another plane that the engine went out, but he was able to get back to the base. But that other plane he would have been on, the world would be a lot different without the energy, especially that you aspire to give him in your story. I really dig your story. It's all about the absolute power and the corruption of absolute power. And I want to have you read some of it.
Okay.
And enjoy yourself, and everybody else can enjoy you. And we'll talk to you afterwards. We'll all talk about this moment.
All right. A reckless disregard. She was dangerous, big ambitious, little caution. And she had the ear of a big, powerful man, a sultry honey blonde, blue-eyed and tall. She could captivate any room she graced with her. Tonight, as always, she'd captivated him. Only now it was getting late. He needed to go home to his wife, and she, her husband. Do you have to go, Lyndon? Bird's waiting for me, he said. He sat with a cigarette hanging from his lip, buttoning up his white shirt. The light in the room dim. A bed, a chair filled the space. The light blue carpet made it cozy. Is this the way you're going to treat me when you become president? Darling, I'm going to always treat you good. She slipped out of bed and walked over to him. Sitting on his lap, she pulled the cigarettes from his lips and took a drag. You got it all worked out, she asked. Are we going to be able to help others make our dreams come true? We are, he said, happy to have a woman with his same motivation, even if she wasn't his wife. And are we doing it like we talked about? You know it. He snuggled his head down into the crease of her neck, her perfume drawing him into her. He ran his hand down her back, the cool silk of her gown riling him. I'm going to become the president. We'll get that great society plan we've been talking about rolling. Civil rights for the Negro, help for the elderly. How are you going to do it? His words excited her. She wanted more. She asked before, but he hadn't said exactly. Become president. Just because you put the bug in my ear, sweetie, doesn't mean you get all the details. She chuckled. But you've got it all worked out. Sure do, he said, lowering his voice and stroking her back. He wondered if he shouldn't stay a little longer. I've always been known as a man who had a plan. She leaned in and whispered in his ear, tell me your plan. He gently pushed her off his lap, taking back his cigarette. She stood over him. You'll find out soon enough, he said, looking up at her. Might just need your help in part of it. Which part? He felt the warmth of her breath, her breathy words on his neck. Helping me clear the path. She pulled away and looked into his brown eyes. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Usually you can read my mind. Know just what I want, what I'm thinking. She smiled. Just didn't know you'd think that way. Sugar, you're going to learn a lot of things about me. You better get ready for this ride. It's going to be a wild one. Bending forward, she dragged a finger down the side of his face to his mouth, planting a kiss where his fingertip had landed. He's well liked, she said. Might have some people mad at you. He tilted his head to the side and squinted one eye. Speaking through tight lips, he held onto the cigarette in his mouth, the smoke curling up into one eye. They all hate him. Frank Sinatra and his mafia thugs, the CIA for getting them involved in Operation Oink Oink down there in Cuba. I'll be doing them a favor. She laughed. He took his cigarette out of his mouth and blew out smoke. I know what I'm doing. Hope so, she said, and sauntered back over to the bed. She got in and pulled the covers over her. Sometimes, she patted the bed next to her, you get to moving too quickly. Everything can't be accomplished in a day. I do things how they suit me, and they always work out fine. He stood up and unbuttoned the shirt he just fastened. This country needs me and my brand of doing things. Can't nobody run it better than me. Tell me all about it, Landslide Linden. Her voice was low and teasing. Better listen up, he said, nodding. Any threat to your rise to power, she said, a nearly unseen smile curling up her lips. Had better get out of the way, he finished her sentence. Lightning crackled as it hit the ground, bright enough to penetrate the sheer curtains covering the bedroom window. It lit up the room just as he climbed back into bed with Miss Glass. The high-speed underground rail slowed as it pulled up in the front of the entryway to the 3-level subterranean building. Alfred pushed his black horn-rimmed glasses on his face and blew his nose into his handkerchief as he waited for the train to come to a complete stop. The first time he'd ever been called out sick, he'd been called back in to the branch he oversaw because of an emergency. The first time there'd ever been an emergency. The ride was much smoother and more efficient now that the tunnels were finished. Boring through new rock as other agencies were placed throughout the catacombs of the bureau system had been quite tedious. He glanced at the glass front, the revolving doors rotating as people came in and out. He wiped the sweat from his brow with that same handkerchief and headed down the 40 steps to the front door. Met with nods from others, the robust pedestrian traffic would dwindle by the time he made it to his lower level agency office. HRI, as it was referred to in agency speak, was a one-man operation. As he entered the elevator, ready to speak with the 2 men who substituted for him, he realized that might have been the cause of the current problem. Alfred stepped off the elevator and walked down the long hallway. There were no other offices on his end of the 3rd level, just white walls and linoleum floors. He stared straight ahead at the door as he approached. From the exterior, it seemed fine. Inside, he knew, was a different story. His bureau job didn't take much shepherding. Some forecasting calculations, adjustments here and there, a keen eye for small details, and an unadulterated knowledge of history. Mostly, he observed. Still, his department ranked high in importance alongside the other agencies, and he often admitted, holding back his abundance of pride, there was no other bureau like it. HRI, the Bureau of History Repeats Itself, had its nuances, but for the most part was a straightforward operation. It had become known early on that throughout the centuries, humankind didn't change. Humans' ambitions and thought processes were nearly immutable. Invariably, things were going to go the same way. It had then been determined that a push in a different direction could create an entirely new outcome and set history on a different course. The bad that intertwined their movement through arrows didn't have to be hurled through time on an endless loop of repetition. The next time around, things could be better. That's part of my story.
All right. Abby, L. Vandiver. Disregard. Yeah, they're gonna try to change history. And I love, the thinking that you have, that when I found out that George Bush Sr. was in Dallas on that fateful day, I said, "Oh my gosh." You know what I mean?
Nixon left. He was there that day. He left before the president got there.
Let's bring up everybody and let's discuss a little more about that time, which was, definitely led us to this point. Here comes, who do we have? There's Greg and Alison and Kate. And so we have, LBJ, he had to be involved in JFK. The only thing I don't like about it is that Roger Stone, our buddy Roger Stone, wrote a whole book about that LBJ was the soul a conspirator of taking down JFK because, of course, he's a Democrat. So, but it was an industrial and military complex that just needed him out of the way, and LBJ just stoked the fire in Vietnam, which is all they wanted.
Right. But he gets a lot of bad rep too, LBJ. Kennedy gets the Camelot and a beloved president, but for many people, LBJ did good things. His Great Society. He made that first reference here in Ohio, I think, like in '64 or something. I was maybe 6 years old. He started Medicaid, Medicare. School programs and things. Some things have been gutted, and they're no longer around. But he kind of carried on the things that some people think JFK was, dragging his feet on, like civil rights. He and Bobby and Dr. Martin Luther King, from what I read in history, they argued a lot about that. When was that going to be signed? When was it going to, be made into law? And that's something that LBJ actually signed. But then, he was a bulldog. He wanted to tear through everything. He had a reckless disregard for how things were supposed to go if he wanted something to go his way.
Yeah. Kate, what do you think about LBJ?
I think he actually accomplished so much. And no question he was a bully. No question he was a manipulator. No question he would take, whatever ruthless steps were necessary to get his way. But at least his way accomplished a lot for a lot of people. So, I wouldn't think he would make a very nice friend unless he was really on your side. He'd be a hard man to go up against. But, I think he's got a better legacy than a lot of the people we're writing about.
Yeah, the thing I can't, whichever way his fingers were in whatever pie that, JFK, RFK, and MLK were all assassinated basically on his watch. He was vice president, and there's just no way that he's, scot-free on that, and he didn't know each one of them. No. So and those leaders right there, I think, would have given us so many more new leaders to have learned from. And I don't see the only thing that he really did was win the '64 election by the largest amount of votes in popular voting history. Yeah, popular vote. He won more of 15 million votes, something like that. So, and I know that sure he did a lot for civil rights, and he did sign these bills into effect. But by the end of his watch, it was in flames, man. The cities were in flames. So I can't get behind him, but I dig what you're saying. He did do some things that were at least positive in the moment. Yeah.
And he had his hand in all the trouble in Vietnam, and that's probably why people don't think of the good things he did, because it's overshadowed by how he handled Vietnam. He didn't do that very well at all.
All he did was say, "Make me the president, and I'll send the troops in. Maybe that's what you want,
Right? Exactly.
So Alison, LBJ.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. Basically, I do think that as opposed to a Nixon or. Well, even Nixon opened up trade with China. Like that, I think our current president is the only one who just has zilch.
Yes, absolutely no redeeming quality.
I do think. I agree with everything that's been said, but I think the Civil Rights Act was a pretty incredible accomplishment, and he was a deal maker. He was able to get people from both sides of the aisle to enact this thing that was not popular at all, or that people didn't think would happen. That it was a very, very important piece of legislation. So I can't thoroughly hate on him because of that. I like Kate said, I wouldn't want to hang out.
Wrong word. You can't. How could you hate anyone?
But I kind of like. I think he was smart, and I'm a big fan of the Civil Rights Act. So
he was a born politician, That's what he was. So.
Yeah, and that's very important to be able to do these backroom deals. That's how some good gets done. And I think the Civil Rights Act is a really good example of that. So, but yeah, I agree with everything.
Greg,
Oh,
There we go.
what do you say, LBJ? Or you? Yeah, I just what he did, just heading into when he said, "I'm not going to run after." All of a sudden, Martin Luther King is shot. Bobby Kennedy is shot. At that time, he says, "I'm not running," and they're both gone. And Hubert Humphrey they were working on that peace treaty. The South Vietnamese and the North Vietnamese, and here comes Nixon in there. But that LBJ had his hand in that too. And that cost a lot of lives just for and why did he wash his hands so easily of that election? How could he walk away from that? There's a lot of things going on we don't know about. I'm Greg. If you got anything, if you have anything to say about LBJ, well, we can carry on.
I think we can go ahead and move on. I think
All right, well, you're next. Okay, so
stop. Let's talk about LBJ some more.
There you go. So we're going to come up and talk James Buchanan, number 15. In just 1 second, I'm going to put you, the girls in the green room, the women in the green room, and we'll have you right back. And Greg, just for 1 second, I'm going to put you in the green room. Hold on, so I can put up my. I got to put up the brand here. You guys can see. Here's the brand, and so we can just flash this on and off. Here's the Faking of the President. Here's the book. Buy some copies from the Golden Notebook right now. They are on sale. And please get one for friends, too. It's great reading right now when we're all holed up and I need something to read. So I'm taking off the brand, and I am going to remove the bottom banner. And we're going to bring up Greg and talk for a second about Buchanan, who we basically know was the maybe the only gay president. There could have been others. We could discuss this. I'm sure there were probably others who were, in all sorts of sexual capacities, which is nothing wrong with that. No. But your character in your story, the Dreadful Scott decision, he has a desire. He has as much a desire for power as someone who would be, and I love your story because it's the only one in the book that doesn't take place in the Oval Office or with the real president. And I thought it was genius. I really did, because you show power even 200 years later, or whatever it is, 170 years later. The guy will do anything to become this guy who is known for this.
Exactly.
We need to know what the fellow was through him. But Buchanan was another lifelong politician. He did it all. He was 5 times House of Representatives, minister to Russia, Polk's Secretary of State, Pierce's minister to Great Britain. And because he was always away, because they didn't know who he was, so they put him, ran him for president. Worked something out between the South and the North, but he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and was pretty ineffectual in that situation. And also your guy who's his lover was for the South, and I don't think that helped at all. I think that he would want to cater to his needs, the man he loved, the person he loved. So that probably didn't help us at all going into that situation. And so he put everything into the Supreme Court, right? Mm-hmm. And the Supreme Court told him, we're going to take care of it. And there came the Dred Scott decision. Yep. So, and that was basically the start of the Civil War.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So you have the dreadful Scott decision, and you have your academic who wants to succeed at all costs. I love him. So your story, and we'll talk a little bit about that time going into the Civil War after you're done. So have fun, and I know everyone will have fun listening.
All right. So I will also, like everyone else, start right at the beginning of my story, the Dreadful Scott decision. So here we go. Oh, let me drink something first. Dry mouth. Sorry. Off camera. Not a paid endorsement. The dreadful Scott decision. The cheap whiskey tasted like flavored turpentine, burning so intensely as it went down it felt like it was leaving scorch marks in its wake. Scott Deviney was just high enough from the joint he was smoking to consider that a plus, a sign that he was still alive no matter how numb he felt. He was sitting in the dark in his cheap apartment near campus, streaming the panel he'd been on at the Presidential Historians Conference at UCLA the previous weekend. It had aired live on a PBS network in Los Angeles. It had taken him a while to figure out how to access it, and now that he was watching it, it was even worse than he feared. He had always suspected Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Andrew Dickey was a homophobe. His behavior on the panel proved it without question. Alas, Scott had allowed Dickey to get under his skin. He wasn't proud of that, and his doctoral advisor, Dr. Keisha Wells Caldwell, who was also head of the department at UC San Felice, wasn't happy either. He wasn't about to apologize to Andrew Dickey, though. He'd die first. "You have no proof." Dickey wagged his finger at Scott on the computer screen, his face reddened and his voice raising. "Just like the activists who try to claim Lincoln was gay without proof, there's no proof Buchanan was either, no matter how bad you want him to be." He sighed and closed the window. He didn't need to watch himself screaming at rage, embarrassing himself in the university in the process, which was what Keisha really cared about. "He's right, you know," her email had said. "It's just a theory without proof. Slurs from political rivals aren't proof. Just like 100 years from now, historians can't use but her emails as proof Secretary Clinton was corrupt." Maybe she's right, he thought as he picked up the plastic bottle of whiskey. Who even knew whiskey came in plastic bottles? And filled his glass again, taking another hit off the joint. But if I don't make the case for Buchanan being gay, what will be my thesis? That somehow he wasn't the worst president? He laughed bitterly. He couldn't make that case. Buchanan's record as president spoke for itself. The whole point of the thesis was that James Buchanan, 15th president and the man who served before Lincoln, had been a bad president because of his secret preference for other men. He could, and did, make that case eloquently. The problem was he couldn't definitively prove Buchanan was gay. And without that proof, his case fell apart and Buchanan was just another bad president. Just not up for the job and able to read the mood of the country, fervently pro-slavery and a conniver in the incredibly horrific Dred Scott versus Sanford decision. Perhaps the man most directly responsible for the outbreak of civil war. Scott always felt that was unfair. Who was up to the task of bringing the divided country back together without war? Keisha wanted him to change his thesis, had tried to talk him out of it from the first. But he was so certain, always so certain, that the proof was out there somewhere. He'd combed through archives, read scores of diaries and letters from contemporaries, certain he'd find the corroborating information. Buchanan couldn't have gone through his entire life without leaving some evidence behind. His phone chimed with a new email sign. He sighed and clicked open his web browser, and there it was, his salvation. Ann Coleman's letters was the subject line of the email. The return email address someone he didn't recognize, hreed57@gmail.com. Ann Coleman's letters. He felt a rush of adrenaline so intense he had to grip the arms of his desk chair with his sweating palms. The Coleman letters. No, it couldn't be. The record showed that the Coleman letters were burned when the former president died in 1866. All that remained of them was the ribbon with which they'd been tied together in the wrapper, and which Buchanan's own handwriting stated clearly the letters were to be destroyed, unread, in the event of his death. Underneath his handwriting was a note that the letters had been burned per instructions with the signatures of the executors beneath that. That ribbon and wrapper were now on display at Buchanan's home, Wheatland, a museum. Could it be possible, after all this time, the goddamn Coleman fucking letters? And Caroline Coleman, the young woman whom all historians used as proof of Buchanan's heterosexuality. They were engaged briefly, and she died shortly after breaking things off with him. Buchanan allegedly swore he'd never love another, and thus remained a bachelor until the day he died, because such Dickensian vows were normal in the 19th century. Most historians, determined to erase any possibility of his homosexuality from the record, as historians have always tried to erase any trace of deviance and sodomy from the historical record, pushed the idea that his tragic romance with young Ann Coleman and her early death resulted in a vow to never marry as long as he lived. As romantic and lovely as the story sounded, Scott was positive it was just another piece of American mythology, like George Washington's cherry tree and Lincoln's rail splitting. It couldn't be true, at least not the story as told. Well, there was certainly enough evidence to support his courtship of her and the marriage proposal. That was to be expected. He was of marrying age, and that's what men did in those times. They married, had a family, raised children. That didn't mean they couldn't have relations with other men. Anne Coleman was the only woman there was any record of him showing any attention to. Her refusal to marry him was because of his moral failings. That statement was the key, wasn't it? He was so sure he was right. But he couldn't find the evidence. His letters to and from his longtime roommate, Rufus King, were mostly destroyed. The ones that survived showed the two men were affectionate and close. But homophobic scholars dismissed that as simply the effusive writing style of the time. They would, he often thought in despair, only be satisfied if he could find pornographic daguerreotypes of Buchanan in bed with another man. All of these thoughts rushed through his muddled head as he stared at his email inbox. It was probably nothing, he decided, just someone writing to him about the letters. He clicked it open. There was an attachment. And you'll have to buy the book to read the rest. I'm not reading no more.
Greg Herren, thank you so much for the dreadful Scott decision. And that's your man's name, Scott. And it's I love your story, and it just you were able to take the power and give it to just someone who had to have academic fame at all costs and would let nothing get in the way of it. You got to read his story. I'm going to bring everybody up and let's talk a little of how we were dragged into the Civil War. Two sides. It was definitely two sides, like it is now. You know, these people are not giving down. They're walking up to, the Michigan Capitol building with guns, and they're saying, we can do what we want, and screw everyone else, and they're turning their backs on the poor communities, the administration. So we're getting close to that, don't you think? I mean, we learned back then how polarizing that time was. What do you think, right?
Well,
Greg,
one of the most interesting things I find about Americans is how ignorant we are of our own history. It's astonishing. Maybe it's because we're such a young country.
Maybe that's it, yeah.
But people from like Italy and Spain and France and England and Egypt, they're all very, very, very aware of their history. They can tell you all their history casually, right off the top of their head without even thinking about it. And here, we don't even remember 2 presidents ago, what went on during the Bush administration.
Right.
There was a poll in Louisiana 2 years ago. No, God, it's been longer than that. It was during the second Obama term, and 63% of people polled in Louisiana believed Obama was responsible for the Katrina response.
Oh, God.
We're the same thing. That's
I know.
right.
I just saw a short video where the commentator was talking to Trump supporters, and he was using all the things that Nixon did, saying Trump did it. And they didn't know the difference. And he was asking questions like, should he be in trouble for wiring the Democratic, National Convention, and all the things that Nixon did. They just didn't say Nixon's name, didn't say Watergate. And they attributed to Trump, and all of them said it was okay that he did that. And I know that he did that, but it was all right. Not knowing that it wasn't Trump who did those things, that it was Nixon. What now? 60 years ago or more? That don't know their history, and that's why history repeats itself. We forget, all the things that we've gone through to get where we are, and it just takes one person to be in the White House to say bad things, and everybody comes out the wall with all the things that they think and how they feel, all those bad things, and history just happens again.
All over again. It's just like the trickle-down economic policies of Ronald Reagan were the same economic policies of Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge.
And nobody figured out
Great
that.
Depression.
Right. They're still trying to do it. They're still trying to do trickle-down. and they haven't figured out yet it doesn't work. So.
And all the legislation that was passed to prevent another Great Depression, they repealed.
Yeah,
it's basically just an excuse to give money to rich people. It's just like a little branding, you know. So it's like basically just come out and say I want to give money to all my rich friends. That's what it is. You know, and money to myself, you know. Don't think trickle down, you know. It's ridiculous. But it's frustrating to me, and I don't know whether it's like a symptom of the internet or whether it's always been this way as in the United States, as Greg was saying. But like 90% of stuff out there, I hear people saying, I'm like, wait a minute, that was 2009. Like
yeah, exactly.
You know, like, what are you talking about? You were there. You can't just say things like that. You can't say, you know, Obama had something to do with 9/11, you know, like his response to 9/11. I mean, what is wrong with people? It's like,
they're the same people who carry the signs that say, keep your government hands off my Medicare.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they don't have Obamacare. They have
the Affordable Care Act.
Care Act.
But doesn't that make you wonder
was bad.
Doesn't it make you wonder about the history that we know? Someone wrote that, you know? What about if someone put in a history book, the only one that was left, that, you know, Obama was responsible for those things, all of Obamagate stuff that gonna get him.
Knows what
that history book, you know, that's left over, you know, 400 years from now.
Well,
how do we trust the history that we read?
The Attorney General just said that the other day. History's written by the winners. The Attorney General said that.
As you were talking, Greg, how we don't know the history of our country because, you know, 250, 300 years ago, we were native people living here, and their whole country was just destroyed. So that history we know nothing about, you know. So why would we even care about last year or you know? That's why these people have jumped this bandwagon. It's like the Civil War. There was, hey, we have our economy, and this is how we do it, by owning other human beings, you know, and they run our economy, and that's the way it is, my friend. It's like, you know, so they were, you know, that, and I feel that the only time that anyone lost on the grounds of this country, except for, of course, the natives lost everything in our time of the United States, are the South, and they have the most hatred of all. So you got to realize that you go back to Italy or something like that, there's a lot of hatred that even goes to neighbors that go back, you know, longer than we go back, you know, in our whole entirety. So culture is hatred in a lot of ways.
Right. I think the administration's slogan shows that they don't remember history. Make America great again. And I you know, I don't know when it was great, you know, a time that I would want to go back to. I wouldn't go back myself personally to any point in American history. Be here right now.
And you're right. I mean, it was the end of World War II. You know, in the end of World War II, we had defeated the Nazis, and we had, you know, freed the world from fascism, and that America was the leader, and we were moving on. Yet we had a segregated army. And, you know, I said that, come on, what the hell is wrong with this picture? You know, we should have all fought together and died together, and then built houses together after that. And I think we would be a lot stronger, better country for that. And that was a big mistake.
People think TV shows like Leave It to Beaver were the reality of the 1950s and Island Movie. They think that's what the 1950s were actually like, and it's not. Just like they think, when they think of the Civil War, they think of Gone with the Wind as history instead of revisionist history.
Sure.
You know, it's amazing. Hollywood has, our entertainment industry, and we writers have a lot more power to affect cultural change than we probably are aware of.
I'm going to write a novel all about civics, you know, and I'm going to write, you know, and my character is going to be named something like Civic Jones, you know, like.
I like that.
See what that, right?
I think that we do alternative history, especially in this book and as writers, but we do it to expose, you know, the truth and to see the truth through that. And that's how you do things. That's how we continue to make the world a better place and add to the creative side, is to try to spread awareness as much as you can. Sometimes it's an exercise in futility, but if you get through to one person, that's what we can do, and that's why we're doing it, right? All of us right here. And so I appreciate all your work on the book. We're going to take Kate and talk about. We're going to talk about FDR and Huey Long, and you guys wait in the green room. And we'll see you afterwards, and we'll have a little chat, and we'll close it out from there. So see you in a few. And there's Kate, and you have Long Live Long. Let's turn off our little, and you have Huey Long. During his time, he had aspirations to run for president, right? I think he had. He wrote a book, didn't he? Didn't he have a book called My First Days in the White House? Yeah. It gave a picture of his first 100 days. I mean, he had the plans.
Well, I think you'd call him like a small town LBJ.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a manipulator. He was a mover and a shaker, but he was also a person who made a difference. So, it's interesting to have imagined what might have happened if Huey Long had lived, but he didn't. So
that's true. And he was a fan of FDR's for a while, and vice versa. And they finally kind of just went their separate ways around the time of your story, right?
Well, he was a genuine populist. Yeah. And I would say that probably FDR, who did tremendous good, was also, a more mainstream, more, responsive to Wall Street, to bankers, to millionaires, and, came around to have to look after the little people. But Huey Long didn't think he was doing it fast enough.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, kind of like JFK, something like that. Not fast enough. Well, you read from your story, Long Live Long, and we're all going to be listening, and enjoy yourself, because everyone else will be enjoying.
You know me, Peter, I'm a terrible person at reading, but I do it.
I disagree, and I'll build you up if you want. You want me to stay on and build you up for a second? Or
all right. I'll just do what I have to do. Okay, so I like everyone else, I'm beginning at the beginning. The story is called Long Live Long. And so when they think you're on your way out, unconscious, unable to hear, people speak very frankly around you. They say things they'd never say to my face. And it must be added that people are pretty darn careful what they say to me. I have worked hard to make it so. I want people afraid, in awe, worshipful even, were that not an affront to God. That's something I try not to do, offend God. Me and the people need him on our side. I've often thought the other side has been recruited by the devil. Big money, greed, no consciences, happy to keep people oppressed and desperate or indifferent. That's not how I read the Bible, and I was raised on the good book. The man who was speaking now, deep-voiced, authoritative, and strangely smug, was saying things he'll wish he hadn't, should I be able to return to myself. In his opinion, that will not happen. There's a lot of internal damage, which we've tried to repair, but that bullet nicked a kidney, which Robichaud, scared witless at the task of repairing a U.S. senator, nearly missed completely. Another voice, lower and with notes of caution, as though this man at least understood that the man in the bed might be listening, said, but it was caught, the damage to the kidney, and repaired? He had a genteel southern Louisiana voice. The first speaker laughed, an ugly laugh, not the gentle self-deprecation of a concerned healer. Unfortunately, yes, many would have been delighted if this rabble-rousing socialist had speedily gone on to meet his maker. There was already talk at every dinner party, cocktail party, and social event that someone should shoot him. There is great joy in Louisiana tonight. Let him try to orate and dominate in heaven, if he can. There was a pause, then the first speaker, Long had decided to call him Aristo, added, of course it is still touch and go, but it is leaning far more toward go. An amused snort. I doubt that President Roosevelt has much to worry him here. Senator Long is renowned as a fighter, the second voice said. Another sharp laugh, a cruel, confident laugh. When he has troops, bodyguards, and minions to do his dirty work, fat lot of good those bodyguards did him this time. Long had known many men like this, here and in D.C., affluent and self-satisfied. He had taken pleasure in being an iconoclast. Being rendered so helpless here was a particular cruelty, like being staked down by Lilliputians and subject to torment. Though it verged on blasphemy, he thought of Christ on the way to his crucifixion, his stoic patience in the face of brutality and taunts. Senator Huey Long had perhaps too little Christian patience, except as it was forced on him here. He listened carefully to save the voice for future reference, and more particularly to learn about his fate. Aristo said, "Recall, Nathan, that it is hard for any man to fight back when his guts are torn." He's a hero to a lot of people, Orrin, a lot of people. They're standing out there now in the rain, singing and praying and holding up their banners. If hopes and prayer do any good, he'll live to fight another day. The loud, confident voice lowered. "It troubles me to ask this, Nathan, but are you a Long supporter?" This was the man who was charged with his care, a man who openly wished for his death. Long silently rejoiced that the words had done what this man, Orrin, had never intended. He'd stirred up the will to fight. Fighting was perhaps what Senator Huey Long was best at. Fighting to be heard, fighting an establishment happy to enrich itself at the expense of the little people, fighting to achieve a political dream cherished since he was a boy. He'd read about a government of, by, and for the people. He knew from experience politicians behaved as though the words "some of" were written in front of the people. A wave of pain swept through him, and he groaned, startling the two men chatting beside his bed like he wasn't there. The man called Orrin said, "I'll find a nurse," while the gentler man squeezed his hand and said, "Easy, Senator, easy. We're going to take care of that pain." He wanted to reply, but his voice was missing, gone along with his energy and the ability to open his eyes. He could only lie here, trapped in a body that felt foreign, an alien thing not under his command, an unresponsive lump lying on a mattress that was far from comfortable, most likely in a hospital he had built, spoken over with disdain by a doctor he might well have hired. His helplessness was terrifying. He knew how the people he'd wrested power from hated him. Just a turnip-nosed bumpkin, a nobody from nowhere. How dare he? Oh, how he dared. He knew how the people... In the distance, there was a steady rising and falling surge of noise. Soothed by that mechanical hum, he went away somewhere dark and quiet, the place he'd been before their conversation interrupted him. He'd gone away to recover from defeats. He meant to do it again. He was a small boy, playing in the yard with his brothers and sisters. It was hot, and he was barefoot, sifting the silky wind-blown red dirt between his toes and watching it puff like smoke when he wiggled them, knowing his mother would despair but unable to help himself, pouring a bucket of water on the dirt so he and the others could wiggle their hot feet in the cool red mud. A tired family passed with a skinny, tired mule. A sagging child sat on top of the bundle on the mule, the stoic woman carrying another child sleeping on her shoulder as she trudged along. His mother was doing laundry, hanging so many shirts and pants and dresses and nightshirts on the sagging line, the wind shifted them like a gathering of ghosts. He was feeling the hot sun on his back, hearing the happy cries of play, smelling the wind. He found a patch of shade and settled there with a book, knowing he wouldn't be disturbed by a mother who cherished the importance of reading. His dream changed, as dreams do, to those years when his country, his state, his county, his state, his country was plunged into despair. He was in a car driving over the meager roads in his part of Alabama, sweating and shaking hands and trying to drum up support for his election. The political machine down south firmly arrayed against him, making decisions that benefited themselves, Standard Oil, and other corporations, while the poor people, ignorant or barely educated, unable to vote because of poll taxes, languished without a voice. In his dream, he roared, "I am your voice." The roar echoed in his head, but no sound emerged. Their voice had been silenced. Damn it, Regardless of what medicine said, he couldn't die. Not with so much left to be done, not when it was clear that Roosevelt's first New Deal fell so short, wasn't reaching the little people, the small towns, the small banks, the small farmers, the small businessmen, not doing enough to help the people who believed in him because he believed in them. News of his shooting would have reached them. It would have reached Washington, too, where they must be dancing on their desks. There were footsteps again. Many folks don't notice, but footsteps are individual. If you pay attention, if people want you dead and you're concerned about who comes up behind you, these were the steps of the arrogant doctor, the one who declared he'd die, was clearly delighted by that, and was suspicious of those who wanted to believe in what Long was doing. His inert body was swept with the chill of fear. If this man sought to hasten his demise, he was helpless to prevent it. The man stood a long time, watching and breathing, while Long cowered within himself, waiting. The man touched him hesitantly, the fingers scrabbling at his bandage. Long managed a feeble groan. The man sighed, and the footsteps went away.
All right. Nice reading, Kate. I'm going to bring everybody up so we can give you a hand so you stop saying you're not a good reader, because we say you're a good reader, right? Yay!
Hey. Bravo, bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bravo.
So, a populist
Yeah.
and a man who didn't think that FDR was doing enough.
Exactly. Oh, where'd she go?
Kate. I don't know. I don't know what happened to her. I hope she's okay. Come back, Kate. I don't know what to do. Maybe she dropped out or something. Anyhow, I like this because in January 1935, the East Baton Rouge Parish Courthouse was raided by a group of 300 armed men, and because they were wanting to get rid of Huey Long. You know what I'm saying? I wish that we could all just go right to the White House and do this. And if there's any thing that goes on come election day where he doesn't leave, I think we're going to have to. Although everyone kind of agrees that we should wait till election day and follow the due process of the law. Otherwise, we're animals like them. I don't know. You know, I could be led the other way too. Kate is gone. I'm sorry. She's off. I guess she could try to log back in. Hold on a second. Let me go off a second. And I'll be right back. You can talk.
Oh,
wow. Just leaves us.
There we go. I'm back. I just wanted to tell her to see if we could get Kate back on somehow. But I guess I'm next. But we could talk a little bit about that time. Oh, yeah, she's back. Yay! She's back.
I know you've been talking about me behind my back.
You said you were no good with this online streaming either, and look, you did this too.
Prove that I'm no good at that either, right?
We're all very proud of you, and your populist candidate. Although he never made it to the top. He stories about him won the Pulitzer Prize, right, and an Academy Award.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I read All the King's Men, I absolutely believed that was Huey Long. I had to go learn a little bit more, talk about history, get a different sense. But that's still a brilliant book.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. Huey Long I wrote a book about Huey Long myself. It was a plot point of one of my books. And so I had done a lot of research on Huey Long too. And it's really fascinating to see how his name has been blackened since he died. Like we were saying, he paved all the roads in Louisiana. He built all the bridges across the Mississippi River. He built the bridge across the lake that connected New Orleans to the mainland. He brought natural gas to New Orleans. He tripled the enrollment. He doubled the university staff at the LSU, at Louisiana State University. Gave all the students and all the kids in Louisiana got free school books, so they didn't have to worry about not being able to buy books.
He built hospitals. You know,
he built a charity hospital system, the charity hospital that was so notorious after Katrina. Huey Long built that building. And one of my favorite stories about Huey Long is that his favorite hotel in New Orleans was the Roosevelt. And that's why Highway 90 runs from the governor's mansion and it ends at the Roosevelt Hotel in New Orleans.
Oh,
It's a direct road from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. So he could go straight to the hotel from the governor's mansion.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, but if you say, whenever you talk about corrupt politicians, Huey Long always is the first person. That's the first thing people think when you say Huey Long, is that he was corrupt. It's like, well, every governor of Louisiana is corrupt. Huey Long actually got things done.
He was very impressive. When I was researching for this story, I got very attached to Huey Long.
Yeah, I kind of was the same way. And I actually contacted, did you find the website, hueylong.com? There's I don't know if it's still up, but when I was researching my book, I found a website online, and I wrote to them and asked for permission to quote a piece of the website in my book. And the person who wrote me back was very, very, very cautious about letting me do that, and she wasn't really sure if I should be allowed to do this. And it basically, I had to send her the chapter that I was going to use the quote in, and she wrote me a card. I still have it. It was his great granddaughter.
oh.
And she was afraid that I was going to try to use the memorial website, to try to blacken her great grandfather. It was Russell Long's granddaughter, Senator.
Right.
Daughter.
I mean, and Russell, there was a family legacy.
Yeah.
Not as though he was so bad that it just stopped there.
Yeah, Huey and Earl and Russell, the Longs of Louisiana. But
Right. Anyway, it was a fascinating thing to get to do, since Peter really discouraged me from writing about the petticoat incident, which
yeah.
I really we have to do another book just so I can do that.
Well, we want to do another one. We'll see how it goes. So I guess I need to finish up here, and I'll read a little bit from my story, and I'll see all you guys. I'm going to put you in the green room for a minute, hang out for a second, and we'll wrap it up after I'm done, and we can, I guess, talk about the orange hole or whatever it is, and see you guys on the other side. So
Okay.
I'm going to do a little pitch for the book first with our. Let me get our banner up, which I don't mind. I don't mind it running during my thing. And then we got the brand I love. Let's put the brand up for a minute. I got our other one. Bing, 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 bing. Here's the book. And also, this was Crime Reads, one of the strangest, most exhilarating rides you'll take in noir this year. Publishes weekly, many of the 19 speculative stories in this highly entertaining anthology show U.S. presidents behaving badly, some with the same impunity as the current occupant of the White House. I don't know if such a thing is possible, but you need to read the book and decide on your own. The Faking of the President, 19 Stories of White House Noir. And we have 4 of the wonderful contributors in the green room right now, waiting to hang out with us again and close things up. So I'm going to read from my story. It's called But One Life to Give. And I'm going to go somewhere in the middle. So let me explain real quick. My character is Bo Brainer. And he's been a Trump fan since he was in high school. Trump wrote him a letter. He wants to make deals. He wants to make money. That's how he's moved into life. He went to Penn like Trump, and all he wants to do is work with Trump. And the few times he's had the chance, the fate turned on him. So this is his 3rd time's a charm. He's come up with this great idea through one of the agencies he works for. And Trump got wind of it and asked him to come to the Oval Office. So he's sitting there waiting to go into the office. And he's sitting there and he's talking to the secretary. And there is a command post in the Pentagon and someone in Washington who are talking about him. He got hurt in Mexico a month before, and he's wearing a neck brace that is starting to get a little warmer. So you'll see what happens to to Bo Brainer, or you won't see what exactly happens to him, but you'll be able to surmise what's going to happen. So he's sitting there with the secretary, and he asks, so what's your name? My name is Valkyrie, she cooed. So where did you get the name Valkyrie? Because I am a Valkyrie, she answered. Ha ha, I started laughing when the desk phone rang once, and Valkyrie pushed speaker. Yes, Mr. President, she asked. Who is this? The inimitable voice thrust. My name's Valkyrie. What color is your hair? Trump asked. Valkyrie told him blonde. Good, he allowed. I told him to hire only blondes. And what size, what size is your bra? 38D, Mr. President. There was a short silence. Trump asked, is my man out there with this wand thing? Yes, sir. He's very eager to see you. Well, tell him that I'm sitting here with Mike and that Mitch and Linz are on their way. So as soon as they get here, we're going to bring him right in, okay? Trump said. Yes, sir, agreed Valkyrie. He added, thanks. More silence. I told him 38 was unacceptable, Mike. Valkyrie turned off speaker and explained, they should be ready for you shortly. I had to get my game face on now. Trump, Pence, McConnell, and Graham, they'd be eating out of my hand in no time. My plan was win-win for the entire administration and the US of A. My soft brace was hot and strange to the touch. Command. The boys are back in town. Obi-Wan. What's the thermalite reading? Command. All systems go. Obi-Wan. This is bigger than Geronimo with SEAL Team 6. Command. Copy that. Obi-Wan. We're going high. Over. What's this wand thing the president spoke of? Valkyrie asked. A game changer, I answered, adding, no, a world changer. There's approximately 2,000 miles of U.S.-Mexican border, right? Valkyrie nodded. Well, on spotwand.com, every U.S. citizen can sign up to be daily border control agents by logging on to this satellite surveillance platform where every chosen agent is assigned a random quarter-mile sector to surveil for a 2-hour shift. And if there is any illegal activity, the agent reports this immediately, and the nearest border checkpoint will spring into action. Valkyrie added, so you basically sign up to turn in your fellow man? Exactly, I agreed. It cuts right to the core of the human condition. We can keep our country safe with minimal expense above initial outlay and operating costs. Spotwand.com will save the government billions, and our labor cost is zero. See, like I said, there are approximately 2,000 miles of U.S.-Mexican border, and each mile is broken up into quarters. So that makes 8,000 sectors. Then there are 12 2-hour shifts per day. That 12 times 8 for a total of 96,000 shifts per day. Plus you need another 96,000 completely random backup agents to make sure the first shift doesn't try to use their power to abet the enemy. So say 200,000 Americans per day protecting our southern border. What could be more patriotic? I guess you're right, Valkyrie admired, but isn't WAN just a bit of a slur? Not in the least, I jumped. WAN stands for Joint Undesirable Alien Neutralization. Believe me, we've thought this thing out, and we could enhance the program by allotting tax credit to those who complete X amount of exemplary service. Even put their Social Security into a higher yield market. The possibilities are endless, and it's win-win for everyone. Might even monetize the system eventually, she suggested. Absolutely. Every American would be honored to serve. I probably shouldn't tell you this, Valkyrie began, but about 2 months ago, another man like yourself came to meet the president with a similar proposition. I think he had a wall built out of lasers at the border, impossible to penetrate. Well, he also had a similar accident on jet skis in Bermuda or somewhere like that. He wore a knee brace, sat right where you are, but the president had to go wine and dine half the Senate. Were you here at the time? No, she answered. He had his own Valkyrie and his own Alicia. Now, what is that supposed to mean? I mean, earlier you said you were a Valkyrie. The intercom buzzed and she put it on speaker. Send in Brainer, ordered Trump. Right away, Mr. President, she replied. There was another short silence and Trump's voice continued. What do you mean they can impeach me again on a different charge? Whatever happened to double jeopardy? That's when what sounded like Senator McConnell's voice chimed in. Double jeopardy doesn't apply to impeachment, Donnie. Not so to worry either way. They can't touch you in the Senate. Valkyrie clicked off the speaker, looking back at me and told me, straight down the hall, second door to your right. I quickly stood up, cleared my throat, and adjusted my red tie. My neck was burning. Valkyrie asked, do you really like Trump? I don't have to like him, I answered. I admire his acumen. We are a nation of consumers, and Trump's greatest strength is his ability to consume. I winked, passing her desk. If I pull off this deal, I'll be one of the richest men on the planet. You'll be well remembered, she whispered as I made my way down the hall. Command, device ready for detonation. Obi-Wan, I'm almost feeling sorry for this guy. Command, why? He's the perfect patsy. Obi-Wan, he's got us into Trump's spin zone. Command, our team in Mexico did their job. Obi-Wan, all systems go, over. Kellyanne Conway quickly crossed paths with me, talking to her cell phone. I'm telling you, George, she explained, it's like way worse than the Ides of March. Everybody knows. Well, I'm going to need a job, George. I'm going to stop right there and not give you the end and bring all of our people back up to discuss the shit we're in right now. No-brainer can't finish up his mission, but they might come after me if I had him finish it. Here we have Greg Herren, Alison Gaylin, Kate Flora, Abigail Vandiver. They've all been so kind to read with us today and also contribute to the faking of the president. All wonderful stories that you've heard. So, guys, what do you think? What's our next step here? Just wait 6 months if we live?
Yeah, my plans don't really go beyond the weekend.
Yes, exactly. Tomorrow.
I understand. Yeah, we're in a predicament with this. You know, it's like back when who was it? Buchanan. When he was the president, they turned the Senate and the House both went Republican before Lincoln. And the other side just went crazy. So even if we were to just turn the Senate this time, you know, we're going to have these people that are going to be, you know, they're not going to go away. So all we can do is keep adding to the creative side of the scale. I will not sit here and tout armed insurrection. I promise you, and I wouldn't my cohorts here in that position. So. We're just going to get through the weekend, right? Saturday night, we've got a whole Saturday night to another Saturday night, and we don't need any money. We're at home. Change the song. Another Saturday night, and we don't need no money. I got my stimulus check, and I bought 75 copies of this.
I didn't get a stimulus check. It's very sad.
Oh,
why not?
I don't know. I must not have been a good person.
Okay.
I have my letter from Trump somewhere.
Yeah, we have it. I think we shredded it.
I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with mine yet. Here it is.
All right, there's the signature.
There it is. There's the signature.
Oh God.
Oh, that's even the Spanish language side. This is the English side. Whoa.
Why did he send those letters out? Thank God I didn't get one.
Yeah,
because he couldn't sign the checks.
He wanted to sign the check and they wouldn't let him. So
he sent a letter.
So he sent a letter instead. He went to the post office, which he's trying to get rid of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Irony impaired.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well.
On that happy note.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.
We had a very nice evening. The faking of is right here. I'm sure everybody. You have 2 there, Abby. We're gonna give you some extra love.
I'm in.
All
It's
right
okay.
there.
She's got 2, so she makes up for one of you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mine is downstairs where the computer died. So
It's okay. Did your computer die? Is that what happened? We're so glad that you were able to get back on and say and thank you so much, guys. It was really a lot of fun, and we'll be doing this the final show Tuesday, 7:00 Pacific time from the West Coast with all of our other friends, Gary and Chris and Nikki and Danny and Travis and Eric and Sarah. So it's going to be a hell of a show with all of them out on the West Coast. And we're going to be doing it one last time. And I'll always have a fond memory of this night. And I thank you all for joining me.
Thank you,
Peter.
All right.
I'm going to take us off. Hold on. Bye-bye, guys.